On in the chat panel is alluding to, we will get to it now, ladies and gents, all the latest on transfers and contracts. And we even had comments before we even started the show. So I suppose the first bit to really get into is the keeper section. And Allison was put up by Brazil as their rep for their media duties. I didn't mind this at all, David, when he was talking about it. As he said, I've only 1 year of my contract left and then 1 more year on a club option. They'll probably exercise that option. I think about what I have in hand to do. It's a great job and it's a decisive moment in my career when a World Cup is coming. I didn't see that as a bad thing because there's been a few question marks potentially around Allison, but now it almost sounds like Mo Salah, Virgil van Dijk, he's talking about the next 2 years and then we'll see it from there, isn't he?
Yeah, I didn't get the impression that he's kind of desperate to leave. I mean, I think the move for Allison, if he does go, is probably, he's probably going to go to Saudi if it's going to be kind of to earn the money or whatever. So that option was on the table for him last summer. He didn't want to go. He wanted to stick around. I suspect it will be there again. But again, you don't get the vibe from him that he's desperate to leave. I mean, he's just won the Premier League. He's got a good chance of having another crack at the Champions League over the next couple of years. Can't, and the money's always going to be there in Saudi, isn't it? I mean, he can play on for a little bit longer yet. So, I don't think any real concerns there in terms of what's happening around Allison. I don't get the vibe that he's desperate to go at all. Particularly, I thought he had another good season last season as well. So he still can play at this level. So, I guess. If he sticks around, that's ideal because you got Mamardashvili coming in. You can give him a season or two as the second choice and kind of hopefully then line him up to be the successor. And I think that works for everyone. And I know people will say about, maybe Liverpool do cash in next summer and that comes around and that seems like the best time for everybody. But, Liverpool are very much of the mindset. And they do this with a lot of players that, they don't mind them going for free. If we get an X amount of contract out, then we've got so many years of service. You've amortized it completely out of the books by that point. Anyway, it's just not a worry really to lose players on free because particularly they generate so much cash as well. So as long as you're getting high level of service and you're winning trophies, it doesn't really matter. So they're in a kind of comfortable position there with Allison. 1 year remaining on his deal with an option. And then let's kind of see how it plays out. But I think at the moment, you can say with some kind of confidence really that he will be there next season. And Liverpool have got a couple of really good goalkeepers on the books as well then.
Yeah, no doubts about it at all. And Manish saying there, talk about Armen Peshi. Well, that is the next person. Liverpool's second signing of the window. And some interesting quotes that came out from the kid as well, that Liverpool have data on everything, which they outlined in the meetings. It was astonishing how much they pay attention to every small detail. So an interesting one that a young kid, a young goalkeeper from, for most, an unknown Hungarian club, but the club have clearly done the homework on this. And I'm guessing all the noises are positive that they've landed this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's that kind of stuff. It's interesting that so many reports have come out suggesting about how important that sort of stuff is. And I think it really does show, this is not stuff we were hearing over the last couple of seasons. I mean, important to say it didn't preclude Liverpool from making good signings because, McAllister, Gravenberg, goodness me. But I think Jurgen Klopp was maybe front and centre of selling it. I think Liverpool with Arne Slot have maybe had to put together a little bit more of a kind of package, to show what the plan is. I mean, Slot himself now will already be building up a bit of a draw because everybody talks about how great he is to work with. And he won the Premier League at the first go, and looked good in the Champions League, but lost to the eventual winners. So his draw will become a thing as we move forward. But also, it's important to have that background and that show that you've done your homework, show that you've got a plan to take the player from A to B, and the complete opposite of what I suspect Chelsea are kind of doing at the moment, which is throwing money anywhere and saying, oh, well, maybe you'll do well, maybe you're not. We're going to pay you this and we're going to give you an 8-year contract and all those things. So for me, it just kind of shows a really well-run club, which is, I think, you just kind of argue that's exactly what Liverpool are at the moment. And I think this kid's kind of, alluded to that himself.
Yeah, I don't mind these types of signings because it says we're doing the homework and they usually bear fruit as well. So we'll see what develops there.
I would say, sorry, just to come in as well, I would say on him as well that it's, don't don't get too excited yet around him in terms of obviously he's a massive talent. They're big on him. They're excited, but he's going to be in the academy first, and he's going to have to kind of play his way through there and work his way up. He's still very, very young for a goalkeeper, so there's time there. So don't think we'll be. The sort of suggestions he'll be in and around its third choice. I'd be very surprised if that's the case, if I'm honest.
Yeah, well, it's funny because you say third choice. It was going to be my next bit because Vítězslav Yaros, there's a lot of stories, isn't there? And the Dutch newspapers have linked him with almost following Johnny Heitinga to Ajax. Is there anything you've heard about that? Do you think that could be a good move for him?
Yeah, I've not personally stood this one up, but judging by the reports and where they're coming from, I'd imagine there was some truth to that. There's some reports in Holland about it as well, isn't there? So, I think that would be a good move. I believe it's on loan that they're talking about. So rather than a permanent move or anything, which I think is a sensible move because, you don't exactly know what's going to happen with Allison. So just protect yourself. Maybe you can keep Yaros about to be second choice for a season or whatever. I just think, and he's still very young himself for a goalie. So, but that would be a good move for him, I think, in terms of, be really good experience and a good big club to go to and play there week in, week out at a relatively high level. So, that would be a good move for him, I think, and hopefully when he can get over the line. And then I think it's then going to be a case of, Yaros was third choice last season. I think we're going to see Harvey Davis step up into that role because he has been in and around it for a while anyway. We've seen him involved in warm-ups and be around the first team squad. So I think he's going to be ready to step up into that third choice role.
Will be interesting to see what happens. There's a lot been going on in the goalkeeping spots this summer. And the story that everyone is asking about in the chat panel, you knew it was going to come up at some point, Florian Wirtz. And this saga's naturally, as I'm using the word saga, the way people have said it, it's been going on for a while. It seems like the latest news officially from obviously past journalists and other is that Liverpool's third bid was turned down, 130 million, but they're still speaking. There still is expectation that this goes through on all sides, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I cannot for the life of me get my head around the panic around this. This is progressing at a decent speed really for a move of this size, and at no point has there been any expectation or discussion on any side of this or the gap's too big or they're not going to get there. We are talking about minor details being ironed out now. The two kind of official bids have gone in, suggest that we're not a million miles away from the end here. And I would, I would be shocked if this third and final bid doesn't go in and get accepted because Liverpool know exactly where they need to place this one to get it over the line. So we are very, very close to a resolution. And, any comparisons with the Caicedo, Zubimendi situation is just total nonsense. So, be amazed if Florian Vietz doesn't end up being a Liverpool player because, as I say, there's just confidence on all sides that it will get done. And very likely for a British transfer record as well is the expectation. So it's going to be, it could, I think we're moving towards a resolution kind of early in this week in terms of that final bid going in and being accepted. Obviously, it doesn't. We talked about that kind of early deadline being tomorrow. That doesn't matter to Liverpool. They don't need to get it done for them. They can bring him over for a medical on Wednesday after that deadline is passed and get his medical done. And then as soon as the window opens, he signs for Liverpool. So that there's no kind of time pressure on that. I guess the only time pressure is that they probably want to allow the player to get it resolved and be able to go on holiday. So that's literally all that they're dealing with at the moment, but not the actual deadline itself. So, as I say, huge confidence on all sides that this will get done. I think that third bid that will go in will be the final bid and will be accepted by Leverkusen. And then it's a case of getting him over here, do the medical, do the interview, and then let him get off on his holidays for a little bit. And we'll see him on July the 8th. So, no need to panic or worry at all, really. This is on track to get done.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, for all the comparisons of the Caicedo, Zubimendi, well, Caicedo, we didn't do our homework. He clearly didn't want to come to us, as was found out. And Zubimendi, we probably hadn't quite sold it enough. Whereas Wirtz has made it clear he's turned down Bayern, he's turned down City. He wants to come to us. So, there's the full expectation there. And probably the other one, and we don't know how quick this one happens as well. Wasn't it funny that Milos Kerkez left the Hungary camp of internationals for quote unquote private reasons. There's an expectation around this one as well, isn't there?
Yeah, again, it's only a couple of days ago, really, that I was told there's no official bidding yet, so we're not quite as advanced as the Vietz situation. So, but we, these things can move quickly. That bid could be going in right now as we speak, and all of a sudden it will break. So, don't want to kind of put too much of a negative spin on that. I'm just saying that was what I was told a couple of days ago, that they're not quite at that stage. And I know at that point that maybe some of the reports were getting a little bit ahead of themselves about how advanced it was in that moment, and everyone was thinking it was absolutely imminent. So, I think maybe him coming out of the international squad there suggests that things are moving along. And I did have a little sneak, actually, a little bit something passed to me that kind of some Liverpool officials have maybe kind of been talking to him, been around him recently. So, the suggestions that side of things, rather than the club to club element, is maybe the more advanced than actually getting the deal over the line. But we just have to see how that one progresses. And I think it's very clear, isn't it? City are getting Ryan Aït-Nouri, Liverpool are going to get Kerkez. But they've got to get there. They've got to thrash it out with Bournemouth, and Bournemouth, by all accounts, is still being adamant that they want 45 million. So it's a case of, do Liverpool want to get there? How do they want to get there? How much is bonuses? All those kind of things. So, it's going to be an interesting one. But again, you can maybe have some confidence that the Liverpool are going to go in more firmly than they have at the moment. And again, they seem to want to get the business wrapped up as early as possible. So I'm sure we'll see movement on this one soonish as well. But like I say, not as advanced as the Vietz situation as we're speaking now.
Yeah, definitely the two to watch this week. And for all the talk about people who might be coming in, it is important to talk about exits, because that's going to form a big part of these two windows for Liverpool. And I know you'd have clocked this, Harvey Elliott's comments. And just for a recommendation on this, there's quite a few places on YouTube you can actually see and watch what he says as well, for the full tone and body language. I mean, I watched this, David. He almost seemed a little bit defeated, is the word I would say, when I watched him give this interview. And just for the words on the screens, for those that can't see it, it's just a situation that me and the team on my behalf will have to have a conversation about, because I'm going to be 23 next season, and I don't really want to be wasting years on my career, because it's a short career. It's the way he talks about it, because when he's team, it's obviously going to be his dad, his agent, and wasting years. And he talks in this interview as well about sitting down with Slot on a number of occasions. This is one-way traffic, isn't it, really?
Yeah, like you say, the body language kind of says everything, and it's very much my understanding from his side of things as well that he doesn't want to go, and that's the sadness of the situation, really, because, you think about kind of there are maybe some supporters who are maybe pleased to see him go or not that fussed about it, and you kind of compare that to Trent's situation where he goes of his own volition and everybody's fuming about it, and you think, there's a lad there who's a very talented footballer, wants to stay, wants to do everything he can to help Liverpool win trophies, and they're kind of edging him out the door. That's, the ruthlessness of football, really, isn't it? It's sad to see, and I will be sad to see him go. Obviously, we're not quite at the stage where anything's really advanced with that, and clubs being firmly in for him. No offers on Liverpool's table yet or anything like that. But you're looking at Florian Vietz signing, who can play kind of in that 10 position. You're just wondering where are Harvey's chances going to come, and they're probably not, are they? They're not. His prospects aren't going to get any better from last business. So it's it's a sad one, really. But I think there does seem kind of an acceptance there that he's going to have to move on at some point, and it's looking very likely to be this summer. So I think that's a shame, but it's that's football and the way it goes, really. And I think he is now thinking more along the lines of, what is the point of spending another season on the bench and not doing much when I can go elsewhere and be a big player and reach his full potential as well, because he won't do that at Liverpool sat on the bench. So maybe he's thinking more along those lines than he was maybe even a couple of months ago. But there is a sadness to it for me.
And there's a good comment there from Cal Jones saying needs to look at someone like Dominic Solanke. I mean, he wasn't really getting a chance at Liverpool, does brilliant at Bournemouth, and then goes on to Spurs for big money, England international. So there is that pathway. It's not all doom and gloom for Harvey if he does depart.
Yeah, Nico Williams as well at Forest doing
Yeah.
a fantastic job, going out to Forest and back in European competition now. So, and doing well for his country as well. So, there are routes back to the top. And I think the class of club that are going to be in for Harvey Elliott as well that I'm hearing is it's going to be, they're going to be right up there again. They're already going to be in European competition and those sorts of things. So, he's not going to take a real backward step. So I think there's some really good moves out there for him, and he's also still very young as well. So if he does have to go this summer, I hope he gets a really good move, because he's a great lad and a brilliant footballer. I think it's just not the place for him at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah, somewhere will be, and they will get a good player at the same time. And I mean, literally, after we did the pod last week, I said we'll see what develops. An hour later, literally, the Luis Diaz story comes out, didn't they? That Liverpool slammed the phone down on Barcelona. Luis Diaz speaks about it. Even though he's suspended for Colombia, they put him up for the press conference, and he talks about a renewal. He talks about looking at options. And an interesting line, we are talking with clubs. It's normal in the market, and we're looking for the best for us. That doesn't scream to a guy that's definitely staying, does it?
No, it says, which is what we kind of expected, is that he's assessing his options at the end of the day. He's seeing what's out there, because, I wrote a piece on this last week, but it's, people want to say like he's getting kicked out, or they're absolutely ready to sell him or whatever, but it's just not that. He basically, all parties kind of have a decision to make at the end of the day. Either he goes, basically they're saying to Luis Diaz, we're not going to give you a new contract. If you want more money, you're going to have to get it elsewhere. But if you want to go elsewhere to get more money, they are going to have to offer us an awful lot, because you are a settled, hardworking, brilliant player who's been versatile and very, very important for us in a title-winning season. So, either that comes to us, and that's not Barca, by the way, who got completely rejected straight off the bat. Either that big money comes into us, or you kind of going nowhere. So I understand why these kind of seeing what's out there and seeing who can pay the money, who can turn it into a decision for Liverpool to make. But we're still a long way from that. So something has to give. And, I think people you've got to be kind of cynical about these situations, but I can't emphasize enough how this is not a case of Liverpool going, yeah, he's for sale. It's not that, because, sometimes, club will set its position out around its expectations, but if Liverpool have Luis Diaz next season for another, they are not fussed about that. That's not a bad thing to have someone who is, who has been so important to you for last season, to have him again, because he'll do a brilliant job again. And it's why they're actually saying, if anyone wants to tempt him out, we are in that stage where we can't say absolutely no, because he's got 2 years left on his contract, but it's still going to have to be big money, because we are going to have to go out then and get Anthony Gordon, or, whoever it is, just to kind of throw one name out there. We're going to need big money to do that. So I think people think that's maybe more clear cut than it is, but I get why, Diaz is in that situation. He has to see what's out there, but then the onus is on the club, if they do come to an agreement with him, to make Liverpool, to make it something for Liverpool. And they will not just get, accept 50 million to kick him out the door. Why would they? It'd be absolutely stupid. Again, they're not worried about losing him on a free in a couple of years, because they think, we might have won a couple more trophies by then. So what? And he's not. His wages aren't, by the way, as low as is reported. I'd say all that capology stuff is generally nonsense, to be honest. But they're relatively reasonable. So keeping him around, absolutely no bother whatsoever for Liverpool. So the onus massively on Diaz to bring clubs to the table if he does want to go to earn more money elsewhere. But until that happens, absolutely nothing going on, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a strong position that Liverpool are in for this one. And his South American colleague, Darwin Elliott, I mean, we talked about him, and people are looking at the fact that Victor Osimhen turned down 5 different offers from Al Hilal, who probably would have just driven a truck full of money up to his house. Darwin's been linked with them again. Atletico Madrid are mentioned. Completely different to Diaz, though. There's a minimal to non-existent chance Darwin's here next season, isn't there?
Yeah, I would say it's on the low side. I mean, it's interesting. Ismail said that Al Hilal are not going to be there for him, because I know they did come quite hard in the January window, didn't they? At the end of the day, so it's interesting that they're not in the mix, particularly after the Osimhen thing fell through. So, but maybe there'll be other Saudi clubs there. Interest from Europe, isn't there? Maybe, I think Napoli have been linked. Atletico Madrid makes loads of sense if that could happen. So, but there's still a long way to go in the window, and I'm sure there will be interest in him because he'll score goals elsewhere. So yeah, that's one way you can predict with a certain amount of confidence that he will be moving on in this window. It's just not a lot of noise at the moment, so doesn't look like he's going to be going to a Club World Cup team.
No, and I know a few people are saying the different reports from different outlets, let's put it that way, but I think it's best to wait till someone reliable or something really comes up to sort of accelerate. That's maybe the best way I can put that.
Just quickly on that, actually, I just seen some of the chat panel talking about Paul Joyce and stuff, and kind of some people trying to suggest that he's not reliable or whatever. I mean, I just find it absolutely fascinating, really, that kind of in this world, and a journalist actually, or a former journalist, works elsewhere now, was kind of talking to me maybe 18 months ago, a year ago, whatever, and said that there will come a point when nobody is deemed reliable anymore, because in this kind of hyper-fixated social media world that we live in, that every little thing, or you can be undermined by a journalist who gives out what is perceived as good news, and that for some reason makes the actual truth that you're writing seem less reliable or whatever. And there's people, I can't say enough about how good Paul Joyce is. I mean, he is literally for me, kind of, and I'm talking about a guy I know and kind of say was a friend, but the amount of respect I have for him and how good he is, he's on a different level to most journalists. And I mean, if you want to say, because he's not tweeting updates every 5-10 minutes just to drive engagement, that he's not unbelievably reliable or a fantastic journalist, when he writes something, he puts it out there, you can take it to the bank. He is, just unbelievable level of contacts and ability to break news, even in this era where everybody thinks that they have to tweet about every deal or pretend they've got an agent in on every deal, or, which is, by the way, I would say is absolutely impossible. And I would be questioning where the information comes from 99% of the time. And maybe it's coming from the fact that somebody else has already tweeted it, but there we go. So yeah, to call him into doubt, I just think is crazy, really. And I think people need to get better at kind of, knowing what they're reading and knowing where it's sourced and knowing what the motivation is behind it. Because one thing you could say about Joyce, he doesn't just write what Liverpool want. Everything he writes is really well sourced and is proper journalism. He doesn't do an update for the sake of it or to get, a few thousand retweets or whatever. He puts things out when there's real news there. So I would say he's more reliable than probably 99.9% of any other the journalists out there that you might wish to read, to be honest, particularly on Liverpool. He's unbelievable. So, I'd stick to reading his stuff above basically anybody else's on Liverpool. Full stop, really.
Yeah, there's reliability. Although, to be fair, if someone does write today that Al Hilal will offer 100 million euros for Darwin Núñez, I will just believe it blindly because it's what we want to hear. So we'll see what comes up for that. And we almost are. We've talked about it. I've said it. Even I know I say it on pods now. We talk about window 1 and window 2. Window 1, and it might not quite be done on window 1, but it seems about getting the best part of 200 million quid's worth of business, doesn't it? For Frimpong, Wirtz and Kerkez. That seems to be the aim. Does that mean for you window 2? And I know people will go, we need a centre back. And I get all that. I'm not disagreeing with that. But sales is surely going to be the focus of window 2 to start with.
Yeah, I think so. I think that the start of that, I mean, I think some of these deals are going to, maybe even Vietz and Kerkez will probably bleed into the start of that window anyway, or, there's time to get them done in between. It really is kind of, as we said, kind of meaningless, really. So, but yeah, I think after that, it will be a case of turning their attentions to moving some players on, because, want to get some more money back in on the books before you go out and splash some more, which will be the idea. And ultimately, we could talk about kind of needing a centre half or whatever, but for me, they only need one if somebody goes, and the expectation is that probably someone will go, and therefore they will need someone. But they're not going to. I'd be surprised if they went into next season with 5 centre halves. So it's not really a need for that. It's going to be about who's going to move on, what do we need then as a response to that, and then we move forward in the market. So We knew going into this summer it was kind of left back was absolutely going to need to be sorted out, wasn't it? Maybe centre forward is a priority. Could that be Vietz? By the way, we don't quite know whether he's going to be or whatever. I don't know, but those two things needed to be sorted, and then obviously you knew immediately you needed a replacement for Trent Alexander-Arnold, or at least somebody who could play right back. So they were the kind of three priorities, and then moving forward from that, it was all about who's going to go out, who will we need to replace then. So there will be a kind of focus on sales in that, moving towards that second window, and seeing what they need in response to that then. And then that's how the window is going to end up being really busy, because I think there's going to be a few that go and a few that need replacing.
It's going to be busy, whatever way it gets dressed up or happens. It'll be interesting to see. And I suppose the only other thing is we're looking at now rivals. So I know you said you didn't really count Chelsea as a rival, but naturally I think people will look at City's business, they'll look at Arsenal's business, they'll look at City and think, okay, Reinders, Kerkez, Nori seems to be done as well. Arsenal, possibly Sesko, it seems. Is there anyone you're looking at right now that you're thinking, that's handy business? Because this is my words, by the way. It could change, touch wood, it doesn't, but there's no one I'm looking at right now thinking, Christ, that moves the needle for them, really.
Yeah, to be honest, I probably don't watch enough football to really know, but I think the only thing I kind of feel with any confidence is that Vietz is probably the best player that's moving at the moment, and I'd be surprised if a better player than him moves in the market. But of course, excuse me, that doesn't mean that necessarily it'll be a success as well, because we've seen enough times that transfers are really hard to predict, and things can kind of go wrong. But that already for me looks like the most exciting piece of business, and then we'll kind of see really with the rest. I can't say I've watched Reinders very often at all. I think Kerkez looks a big talent and exciting, and I know Liverpool were interested if they weren't able to get Vietz. So if Liverpool like him, then he's clearly a very, very good player. So there's that. It'd be just interesting to see whether City can kind of firm themselves up on the defensive side and stop all those counters, and whether Rodri's just truly the one-man solution to that. Will be very, very interesting to see. Sesko, if he does sign for Arsenal, is he as raw as he's kind of looked? When I watched him in the Euros and kind of thought that, is he knocked some of those edges off his game? Is he able to just come to the Premier League and it fits him and it works? I don't know, but nothing yet has made me kind of think, oh, this is flipped the title race for next season on its head completely, or anything like that, particularly because Liverpool are doing such an exciting piece of business there in Vietz, and also Frimpong looks smart. Kerkez will be a very good player, and upgrades a very big need for them. Nobody's making me think they've caught Liverpool yet, but obviously the game's played on grass, isn't it? And we'll kind of have to wait until the start of the season to judge that. But just on the face of it, I think Liverpool have maybe had the strongest start, if of course they get those deals that we expect over the line.